Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin again with Allah's blessed name as we attempt in this, the second part of our responses, to respond to the questions of our friend, the Seeker. At the end of the first part, we addressed the subject of the law of punishment in Islam, and in that context we looked at the law of punishment for adultery and fornication, for example, and we found that the previous law, which had come down in the previous revelation, which came down to Moses, Nabi Musa alayhi salam, in the Torah, had prescribed the law of stoning to death. In Arabic it's called rajam, stoning to death. That was the law which came down to the prophet Moses in the Torah, Musa alayhi salam. And that the divine wisdom had ordained that the law can be changed whenever the Lord God so determines. And when he sent down the last revelation, there is no more to come after this. This is the last, the Quran. How do I know that? Because that's what the Quran says. This is the last. He changed the law, and the new law from the same one God, which came down in the Quran, is the law of punishment divinely ordained for adultery and fornication, is a public flogging. And so there was a change in the law. We also mentioned on the last occasion that there's a law in the Quran for stealing, and there's a purpose for that law. We said it is to cut off the hand of the thief in order to protect and preserve the free and the fair market. That Islam is absolutely insistent on the maintenance, the establishment and the maintenance of a free and a fair market. For if a free and a fair market does not exist anywhere in the world today, the sun no longer rises anywhere on a free and a fair market. Today the market is a market of thieves, and those who have power in the world are ripping off the rest of mankind. But how many people have knowledge? Lots and lots of information in the world today, but how much knowledge? In this, the second part, we are invited by our friend the Seeker to again return to the law of punishment in Islam. He asks us whether or not there is a law of the death penalty, putting to death or executing someone who commits apostasy, who leaves and gives up the religion, in this case the religion of Islam. He wants to know whether that law of apostasy in Islam is death. Bismillah. Excuse me. I'm battling with a cough and the flu. Excuse me. Before we attempt to respond to this very interesting question, Seeker, allow me to spend just a minute in an explanation on the philosophy of the law of punishment in Islam. The law of punishment, as it has come down in the Quran, is directed towards three objectives. In the first instance, the law of punishment seeks to reform an individual who has violated the law. Such a person, for example, would be the one who violates the law of prohibition of the consumption of alcoholic drinks, alcoholism. And the law of punishment of a public flogging it comes only at the end of the process of trying to correct that individual, to break the bond of alcoholism, the addiction to alcohol. And at the end of the road, if you still cannot get him to give up alcohol, then there is a flogging, but it's done in a very compassionate way. It's like taking his shirt off and rolling it into a ball like this and hitting with the shirt. It's most certainly not an act of brutality. That, excuse my language again, that's rubbish. I'm so sad that I have to use this violent language, but there are people who have eyes and don't see, they have ears and they don't hear, they have hearts and they don't understand, and they just simply absorb terminology that comes from Dajjal uncritically. So this law of punishment is by no means brutal. It is reformatory. It's meant to embarrass the person and try to get him to build the internal strength to break the bond of alcoholism. And the process of curing an individual from the addiction of alcoholism in Islam does not cost even 1 cent. No, they spend billions of dollars in trying to cure alcoholics, and we spend nothing at all, nothing at all. I have a book entitled The Quranic Method of Curing Alcoholism and Drug Addiction. You could find it from my website. You can download it free of charge. So the first objective of the law of punishment in Islam is to reform the individual. That's why they're punished. Hopefully that they can be cured of their disease, of their addiction. And then there is the law of punishment in Islam, which is retributive. In the law of Moses, it is said an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, meaning equity in justice. If you hit me, I am entitled to hit you, not to escalate it. I hit you with my fist and you hit me with a nuclear weapon? No, that is not equity and justice. So retribution, the one who has been damaged, the one who suffered an injustice, has a right to justice of an equitable nature. The punishment must be equitable to the crime which was committed. So the law of retributive justice, punishment equal to the crime. But then there is in the Quran a third kind, a third objective for which there is a law of punishment. And that is when the crime, there's a difference between a sin and a crime. In a sin you violate the law, but there is no punishment here. The punishment is there. But in a crime, you violate the law, and there is punishment here and punishment there. That's the difference between a sin and a criminal act. So there are criminal acts which are so dangerous, so destructive in nature, that they threaten the stability and health of the society. They even threaten the survival of the society. And hence, the punishment in this case is not reformatory. It is not retributive. The punishment is deterrent. We punish you not only for what you have done, but to prevent others from doing what you did. Deterrent punishment. And the cutting off of the hand of the thief is one of those punishments, deterrent punishment, in order to protect and preserve the free and the fair market. I gave you an example of how a free and a fair market no longer exists in the world today, did I not? How can I lend someone money that I don't have? Is that possible? But that's what banks do. They call it fractional reserve banking. If a bank has $10, the law allows the bank to lend more than $100. Oh, really? That's fictitious money. Yes, that's dishonest. That is legalized theft. And when the bank lends this fictitious money out of nowhere, thin air, because the bank does not have the money, it's just entries in the book, and then people come and they want their money back from the bank has to rush to get a loan to pay because the bank doesn't have the money that the bank lent out. This is only one of the examples of the destruction of the fair market today. I can give so many more, like you take a piece of paper and you print a picture on it and you put a number on it and you assign to that piece of paper a totally fictitious value. You call that money? Before you criticize me, do please study international monetary economics, and then you can criticize me. I have studied international monetary economics. That's what it is today, a piece of paper. And tomorrow they don't even need the paper. Yeah. God gave us gold coins and silver coins, money with intrinsic value. That's money with the Lord God. And I have a surprise for you. When Jesus comes back, and he is coming back, and there are only two people on the face of the earth who believe as a matter of religious belief that Jesus is coming back. And they are Christians and Muslims, with the exception that some of the people of Western Christianity are now moving away from belief in the return of Jesus in flesh and blood. No, looks more like a storybook, looks more like a spiritual, a dreamy coming back, not flesh and blood, because they know what's going to happen to the state of Israel when Jesus comes back. Oh yes, they know it very well. And so when Jesus comes back, is he going to be using this bogus US dollar? Or this bogus euro? These pieces of paper parading as money? Have you asked that question? Yet this is money today. It's bogus. It's legalized theft. We no longer have a free and a fair market in the world. And that's what Islam wants. And that's why you have the law of cutting off the hand of the thief, so that anyone who attempts to destroy the free and the fair market by stealing, and we cut off his hand, nobody else will attempt to do that. Deter and punishment. So is there a law of punishment for apostasy? Apostasy being that you leave your religion. You are a Muslim and you decide to leave Islam and join some other religion, apostasy. Is there a law of punishment for apostasy in Islam? The answer is that laws come from the Book of Allah, the Quran. And the hadiths are not meant to supersede the Quran. When a hadith of the Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, is in harmony with the Quran, then we accept it. And it has a status of supporting the Quran. When a hadith is not in harmony but not in conflict with the Quran, we can accept it but at a much lower status. But when a hadith is in conflict with the Quran, what do? Answer, we discard it. And so is there a punishment in Islam for leaving the religion? And we say punishment meaning not over there, a sin, but here, a criminal act. So now let's frame the question step differently. Is it a criminal act to apostatize, to leave Islam, for a Muslim to leave Islam? That's the question. We're not asking whether it's a sin. We're not asking if it's a violation of the law. We're asking whether it is a criminal act for which there is a law of punishment in Islam. What does the Quran say? The answer is, the Quran says, there is no compulsion in religion. La ikraha fi ddin. The Quran says, Al-haqqu min rabbikum. The truth has come from your Lord. The truth does not come from CNN. The truth does not come from, least of all, from the New York Times. The truth comes from the one God, the God of Moses, the God of Abraham, the God of Jesus, the God of Mary, the God of Muhammad. Allah's blessings be upon them all. Al-haqqu min rabbikum. The truth has come from your Lord. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. And when that truth comes, whosoever wishes is free to accept, and whosoever wishes is free to reject the truth. That is what the Quran says. You have the freedom pronounced in the Quran of either accepting or rejecting the truth. And when you choose to reject the truth, how do those who accept the truth respond to those who reject the truth? The answer is in the Quran, lakum dinukum waliya din. To you, your choice, and to us, our choice. There is no question of punishment there. No criminal act has been committed. Oh yes, there's punishment there for anyone who rejects the truth and pronounces that it is entirely legal and permissible for a man to marry another man and to get a marriage certificate. And when Imran Hosein says that, you are annoyed with me? Well, I don't care a fig leaf if you're annoyed with me. I don't care a fig leaf if you're annoyed with me, because that's the law which has come from him. And when the law comes from him, whether you are comfortable with it or you're not, whether you agree with it or you don't, once you know that it has come from the Lord God and you accept that it has come from the Lord God, we submit, and we invite you to submit. And there is no law of punishment in the Quran for apostasy. None. Rather, the Quran has established a democracy of faith. That is, mankind has the freedom to choose, and there is no compulsion in respect of choice. La ikraha fi ddin. This beautiful, this gloriously beautiful established statement in the Quran of democracy in choice, that mankind have the freedom to choose. And when they make their choice, we respect their choice. This cannot be destroyed and superseded and cancelled by something that comes in the hadith. Not at all. So if we find in the hadith that if a man changes his religion and leaves Islam, put him to death. Put him to death. I invite you to reflect over the fact that such a hadith would be in conflict with the Quran. Like the hadith which says, I apologize to my Christian audience for this rubbish which should be in a garbage bin, not in Sahih Bukhari. Yeah, I said that. This rubbish which should be in a garbage bin rather than in Sahih Bukhari. That Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him, married a 6-year-old child. Yeah, that's what is there. When you find such rubbish It is in conflict with the Quran. It's a hadith, but it is in conflict with the Quran. Because the Quran speaks about marriage with women. It never speaks about marriage with a child. Always nisa. فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ نِسَاؤُكُمْ حَرْثٌ لَكُمْ. Nisa, woman, never a child. So in the same way that you recognize that as rubbish and you throw it in the garbage bin, so too whenever you find a hadith which is in conflict with the Quran which is absolutely authentic, which is uncorrupted and incorruptible, which is the only book in human history which has survived for 1400 years without any change in the text. All the copies of the Quran in the world today have the same text. And Washington, you can do what you want, you can't change that. The Zionist Judeo-Christian Alliance can do what they want, they cannot change the Quran. No, you can't do it. So here is a book absolutely authentic. And when that book establishes something, and you find in the hadith that which is in conflict with the book, we stay with the Quran and we discard the hadith. And so my answer to you, Seika, and my answer to the rest of the world, is that the law in Islam gives to people the freedom to choose in religion, to either accept or to reject. And when that choice is made, it has to be made with complete freedom. La ikraha fid din, there is no compulsion in religion. And when that choice is made, and if someone chooses to reject the faith or to change his religion, then we respect his choice. Lakum dinukum waliya din. There is, however, a law of treason in Islam. And if there is any punishment, it will not be for changing your religion. That is not the reason. When a treasonable act is committed, and a treasonable act is one which endangers the security of the state, for that there is punishment of death, treason. And around the world, treason is a capital punishment. Yes, around the world today. So if there is a punishment in Islam that is a punishment for treason, it is not for changing your religion, for which you have entire freedom. It is for acts which endanger the security of the state. This is my answer to you, Seika. We now turn to question number 6 from my friend the Seika, in which he asked me, he says that I have the impression that while the Shia Muslims are at the forefront of the struggle against takfirism, Sunni Muslims are much more ambiguous in their attitude towards Wahhabism and takfirism in general. Is that so? Why is it that while in Russia there are men like Ahmad Haji and Ramzan Kadyrov who are openly mortal enemies of takfirism, they call it Wahhabi shaitans, most of the Sunni world outside of Russia seems to be at least silent and dares not declare spiritual war against these sects. Seika, I do not allow CNN to manufacture terminology and then to hoist and foist that terminology upon me, that I must use their terminology. The Western media will not tell me what language to use. The word takfirism comes from them. We don't have this language in Islam. No. The habit of pronouncing a legal opinion or a fatwa that someone is no longer a Muslim, he's now a kafir, a disbeliever. This act of pronouncing someone to be kafir From that comes the word takfir. Takfir from kafir, to declare someone a kafir. And this has been there in the world of Islam long before the Wahhabis ever came onto the face of the earth. Yes. And this habit of giving legal opinions of different people are now kuffar. Kuffar is plural of kafir. It exists in the world of Islam independently of the Wahhabis and the Saudi Arabia and so on, and Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. In India, for example, you have the Deobandi and you have the Barelvi. And the Barelvi declare of the Deobandi that they are kuffar. The Deobandi declare of the Barelvi, and this one declare of that one, and that declare. It's sectarianism. And so takfir, this business of delivering fatwa of kufr, is there and is not connected with the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia. No. It is a disease, a sickness, which is all around us in the world of Islam. And to hijack the word takfir and now give us a noun called takfirism, and to isolate the use of this word now to the Wahhabis of Saudi Arabia who came out of the Saudis. We do not allow our vocabulary to be used in this way. Now then, the conduct of the Wahhabi Muslims, who are the Salafis who support the Saudi state, those are the Wahhabis. In my definition of the Wahhabi is a Salafi who is in support of the Saudi state, because you have Salafi Muslims who are hostile to the Saudi state and who are in prison. The Wahhabis are a people who are now an endangered species. Yes, you have ISIS, which has been created by the Saudis and which is an illegitimate child of the Saudis and which is now poised to take over Saudi Arabia from the Saudi state and bring to the heartland of Islam something even more vile than the Saudi Wahhabi religious movement. So it is not right to say that the Shia are the only people who are opposed to takfirism and the entire Sunni world is either silent or in support. This is not factual. And we should be careful and study our subject so that we make opinions based on facts. The truth of the matter is that the overwhelming majority of the Sunnis of the world reject the Saudi state. The overwhelming majority of the Muslims of the world, the Sunni Muslims, have responded with great anguish and great anger at the conduct of the Saudis, for example, in the demolition of buildings, which are sacred buildings for us in Mecca and Medina, in what they have done to the Kaaba, in making it like Las Vegas. The majority of Sunni Muslims in the world today consider this to be obnoxious. Majority of the Muslims, Sunni Muslims in the world today don't like that Saudi regime out there. And there would be a lot of smiling faces on the day when Saudi Arabia returns to the garbage bin from which it had originally emerged. So there is not this question of Sunni Muslims in support of the Saudi Wahhabi movement, the religious movement which emerged out of Ibn Abdul Wahhab. Rather, there is a lot of resentment against them in the Sunni world. But you also have in the Sunni world of Islam, like you have in the Shia world, so many different divisions. And in these divisions you have a lot of fatwa of kufr. And so we ask you to be circumspect in your use of language and do not absorb terminology uncritically, which has been fashioned by the Western media and then hoisted and foisted upon the rest of us. Like, for example, calling a scholar of Islam a cleric. Please don't use that word for me. Cleric, I say that's the door. Please go. Don't come back. Because we don't have that terminology in Islam. Cleric. We don't have any clerics in Islam. This terminology is not acceptable to us. So takfirism is something which has been with the Muslims all through their history, and I don't think it is a unique phenomenon now with the Wahhabis who are rampant now with their ISIS. And now we turn to the last question for today, the seventh question, and that is, having submitted these questions above to you, I now feel that I need to ask you, what are the main historical grievances of Muslims towards Orthodox Christians, or the main events in Russian history when Muslims have felt that Orthodox Christians or Orthodox rulers have wronged Muslims, persecuted Islam, or otherwise acted sinfully against our Muslim neighbors? In other words, what are the main reasons for the Muslim distress of Orthodox Christians? Sekha, I love this question. Oh yes, I love it. Why? Because you Orthodox Christians, you got homework to do now. I've done my homework. I have looked at Muslim history, and I have recognized the conduct of the Ottoman so-called Islamic State to have been unjust. And I have denounced them for their injustice and their oppression. I have denounced them for their wickedness to Orthodox Christians in waging bogus jihad against Orthodox Christians, and Russia in particular, for so long. I have said that Muslims have the right to defend themselves when they are oppressed. But I have said that it is false, it is wrong, it is wicked to accept money from the CIA and weapons from Washington to go and fight your jihad for liberation from oppression. No, you don't take money and weapons from Saudi Arabia, which is a bogus client state of the Zionists. You don't take money and weapons and training from Turkey, which is a NATO member state, to wage a jihad for liberation from oppression. So I have made my position plain and clear as to how Muslims should respond when they are oppressed. But I cannot and I will not look at Russian history and look at the history of the Orthodox Christians and say, you are wrong in doing this and wrong. That's your work. You are the ones who have to do what I have done with Muslim history. And when you have pointed out to me that yes, we did this wrong, we did that wrong, that the Tsars were not our Tsars, they were foisted upon us. And Tsarist Russia made an attempt that the Soviet Union followed upon to try to crush Orthodox Christianity. If you do that research, and if you tell me these things, then we can respond. But I don't think it's proper for us to examine Russian history and Orthodox Christian history and to say these are our grievances against you. It would be much, much better if you were to do what I have done with Muslim history, and I pray that you will do it. Thank you.